like that stuff it can't just be a poster on the wall. You got to feed it, and you got to feed it daily. And the way you feed it is through your language. Like every team's got an opportunity to be unique. You don't have to use the language of other teams. You have to use the language of rugby. Like, so we don't have attack or defence or counter-attack. We've got our own language around that. And the same in the All Blacks, got our own language, and the Chiefs.
I just would love, you've got a Kobe top on. I know that speaking with a couple of the players, that 2018 was a big change in winning the championship. I'd probably just love to hear, just to wrap up the podcast, that story of the year and how you tied in the company and the culture and the team, that story.
Yeah, so I finished with the All Blacks at the end of 2017. I didn't go on the interview tour. I had prostate cancer, and I decided midway through the year that I wanted to get it out, have a prostatectomy. So that's what I did. And my time had come anyway with the All Blacks. At that stage, I'd had a third of my year either playing or coaching the All Blacks. It's a hell of a long time. So it's as important for the players and staff for me to go as it was for me. Anyway, I'd been approached. You
did pretty well for the All Blacks.
I was approached by Gori Fukumoto, who had just become Kantuku, or director of rugby for Kaboko Steelers, and I'd had an association with them anyway through the Chiefs, through my years with the Chiefs. Because they're partners, Chiefs and Kobe are basically partners. So he asked if I'd come over and run the program for them. They were replacing coaches. In fact, they'd replace coaches just about every year. They'd had some really top coaches there. Guys like Gary Gold, Alistair Coetzee, Jim Mackay, who I took over from, really top coaches. And but they hadn't had a lot of success for a while, and I started doing a bit of research, ringing guys from other clubs, coaches from other clubs. What they think about Kobe? They virtually all said the same, that a lot of talent, a lot of Porsches in the car park, but soft underbelly. Good for 20 minutes, and then you could get on top of them. And so I started at the end of 2017 by selecting a coaching group. So Dave Dillon became a head coach. Nick Holton, who was already there at Kobe, but not in a full-time capacity as a coach, he became a coach for me. I got Steve Cumberland, who'd been there previously. I was at Kintetsu, but I wanted him back. I'd known him well when he was with Highlanders. We were good mates, and I knew what he was all about. So got him there. Scotty Hansen was already there, who's now coaching Crusaders. He was also coaching the Sunwolves and Japan, so that was difficult, and we got Andre Bell to come in as a part-timer, who then took over from Scott Hansen. We had a Japanese intern called Kihei Morita, who played 10 a couple of times for Japan. And we had a player, Andres Becker, coming out of the playing group, who we wanted as another intern, basically. Big group of players, 52 players, which was new for me, huge amount of players. But I ran the camps, the initial coaching and staff camps I ran out in Cambridge because of my prostatectomy. I couldn't travel at that point. So they came out to me. We booked out an office in Cambridge for a week, and we did some research. And so I wanted to know about the club. I knew very little about the club, and we wanted to settle on something that we could use to create some real personal meaning for these boys and identity, and know who they were and who they were representing. And then it became apparent that it was the most successful club in Japanese history. It was 94 or 92 years old at the time. Wow. It was a game adopted by the company as a character builder for tough steel workers. And so as we went through the history, you started to build a picture of this is a tough club. And I've been told that they've got a soft underbelly, but this is a tough club. So we started talking to old boys who'd won multiple competitions. Hagamoto, coach, a very successful coach from the past. Hirao, who unfortunately passed away, but the star of the club. These guys painted a totally different picture than what the current picture I was getting. And then one day, Gori-san said, "Oh, by the way, Kobe was destroyed in the earthquake." And I knew Kobe was destroyed, and he said, "And Kobe Steel, the factory, was destroyed." I said, "Really?" That was 1995, so it's not that long ago. So he had all these old photos, so we had a look at the photos. And then he showed me this photo of the number 3 blast furnace, which provided the world automotive industry with 60% of their springs.
Wow.
And the factory had collapsed. And he said this photo of the number 3 blast furnace is often the photo that you see associated with the Hanshin earthquake, because we were the first company to recover and to start operating again. And I'm going, "You're kidding me." And so we went through this whole story of I won't go into much depth, but how quickly the blast furnace was repaired, how quickly got the flame relit, how they got the molten ore out of there to be able to fix it, and the tough decisions that the staff, led by the CEO, had to make under the hugest pressure, because if it wasn't fixed within 3 months, they were going to lose their IP. They were going to have to get someone else to provide the steel that they'd been providing. And so within 67 days, they were up and operating again.
Wow. So
just by telling you those things, as well as the age of the club and the fact that it's for steel workers, it wasn't hard to sell to the boys a work ethic and understand that they were playing for a special club. They weren't just any club. They were at a great club, and they were representing a company that shown the toughness and resilience to not be out of the earthquake. And so that's us. We've developed a lot of initiatives, the way we run the team, based on that. So 218, together with that, I want to bring all the ideas of rugby that I've ever learned in my life, all the best ideas I wanted to bring to Kobe. And one of the things that had shaped me hugely as a young kid was the 1966 All Japan team that came out to New Zealand. 67 through to 69 was one of the greatest eras of New Zealand rugby. All Blacks were unbeaten, phenomenal era, phenomenal depth of players. So this All Japan team comes out, and so I was 10 at the time. My old man took me to watch them play Bay of Plenty. And I'd never seen anything like it for a kid from a little rural town. They never jumped in the lineouts. So they'd drop down onto one knee and the hooker would throw it down to their knees and they'll pass the ball back and they'll just play.
Smart.
They had a little winger called Demi Sakata who scored 5 tries against Bay of Plenty. And they beat Bay of Plenty. And I'd never seen rugby like it. They didn't kick the ball away. If they did kick, every kick was positive. Everything they did was trying to speed the game up and score. They then played the Junior All Blacks, was their test match on that tour. And so you can imagine how strong the All Blacks were. So the Junior All Blacks were a hell of a strong. And they beat the Junior All Blacks All Japan. And Demi Sakata scored 4 tries. He then stayed on and played for Canterbury. He scored something like 31 tries in 27 games for Canterbury. And so it had an amazing influence on me as a little kid, seeing this sort of rugby. So when I went to Kobe, my first a media session I had, I explained this to the media people, that my dream was to come over to Kobe and be true to that All Japan team and play a similar style of rugby. So I banned box kicks. We created a kicking strategy that was much more attacking and made more sense to me based on backfield movements. We all bought into, the staff and the players all bought into a really exciting game. a game that allowed us to move the ball from anywhere if it was on. And so, we stumbled a bit at the start, but by the time we got through to the playoffs, we were unbeaten. We won a quarterfinal. I think we got 60 points on Rico, I think, in a quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Struggled against Toyota in the semi-final, won maybe 38-19 or something like that. And then went up to play Suntory, who were going for a three-peat. And for some reason, we played at their home ground in Tokyo. I'm not sure why, because we were head top qualifiers. But anyway, we had some great players in that team who were great leaders and will become great coaches. Andy Ellis was one. He was one of the captains. Adam Ashley Cooper. He's probably the best player of my time at international level. He's probably the best player I've coached against because he popped up everywhere and he was so outstanding at every position he played at. So coaching him was a real thrill to me. I used to take my computer down after trainings and show him something, and he'd say, "Oh, bugger, I've told the boys the wrong thing," and he'd gather the boys all around, he'd show them the clips. And so he was becoming a coach like we were. Daniel Carter there as well, obviously, who I've got a long association with, and he's fantastic in that team. So we went up there and we beat Suntory 55-5 in the final. I think we kicked seven times in the match. Then the following year was a bit the same. We played Suntory in the semi-final the year after. They played really well. We beat them not by much. We beat them, and then we beat Kubota 43-7, I think, in the final. So it was a really quick turnaround, but it was everyone getting excited. Everyone starting to understand who we were, and that whole idea of you're stewards of the jersey for a short time. And when you hand that on, it's got to be in a better position than when you got it, because that's what the club, that's what the history demands. And so you have players striving to make their jersey better, and a few have passed on and to go and work at the company and retire. And they've definitely left the jersey in a stronger place.
So and the culture and the story was touched on through the week, daily sessions.
Yeah. So that stuff can't just be a poster on the wall. You got to feed it, and you got to feed it daily. And the way you feed it is through your language. Like every team's got an opportunity to be unique. You don't have to use the language of other teams. You have to use the language of rugby. Like, so we don't have attack or defence or counter-attack. We've got our own language around that. And the same in the All Blacks, we've got our own language, and the Chiefs. And so everything should tie into your identity, who you are, and what you want to achieve. Awards, if you're handing out awards, they should feed that legacy stuff. The game plan should reflect the attitude you've got as a group and the attitude of the past. How they play, how you're going to honour them. So I think everything, you've it's a big job, but you've just got to feed and grow it constantly.
Yeah. And
if you've got a group of players that are hand up rather than hand out, you can achieve anything. And we had a group like that. We had a group of players who didn't want to lose anymore. Some players come in like Daniel Carter, who virtually never lost, and he didn't want to lose. And then you had these other players that were sick of losing. So it wasn't as difficult as what it sounds to turn it around. The difficult thing now is to keep it going. So you've always got to, whilst you keep the core the same, the bone deep stuff remains the same. You've got to experiment around the fringes to get that excitement going and make sure that the hands are up, rather than letting the disease of me come in where players want a bit more and want it a bit easier. So that's challenge. That's challenge of all teams, I think, that have been successful.
Yeah, outstanding. And what you touched on there about feeding the culture daily, like even that language in itself is so explanatory. So